So today I am here with Matt from Body Matters, and we're here to talk about all things physio related,
Cool.
really.
Yeah.
Welcome Matt.
Exciting.
Welcome to Conversations on the Couch.
Thank you. No, pleasure.
So tell me a little bit about Body Matters, because I know that your approach to physio is very different, something that I actually like, your ethos, but tell our listeners a little bit more about you and how you treat the body.
Sure. So I treat for an hour, which I think is really important to really get into the nitty gritty of what's going on with people. And I guess the concept behind that is trying to work out when people have a complaint, obviously it's usually pain, more so than anything. We want to take that pain away.
Yep.
But I guess the concept is trying to work out what's led to that pain state, whether it be a movement pattern problem or a muscle imbalance, a posture or activities, and trying to, I guess, I treat all hands on, but it's about trying to improve those facets so that the body will move better and start healing.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, isn't it? Like, it's not, you might have a shoulder pain, but generally it's not just the shoulder that can be.
And shoulders are a perfect example, you know.
Yeah.
If the big thing we find with everybody is a swollen or inflamed bursa, and you know, so anyone with shoulder pain will go get a scan done and it'll come up as bursitis, which, you know, sure, that can be the source of pain, but you think, well, why is that bursa, which is present in everybody, angry in you? And that's where I think the treatment comes into it. Yeah. So also, I guess from me, in a treatment perspective, I treat with a few different techniques compared to a lot of physios as well. So it probably aligns maybe a little bit more with some osteopaths.
So tell me more about those techniques that you use, because they are quite different. And I know that some of our clients who actually do go to you have had better success with healing injury, working on their injuries and getting through that pain as well. So tell me, you know, some of those techniques that you use.
That's nice to hear for starters. But I primarily treat with a technique called Counterstrain, and it works on well, the way I quickly describe that to people, which I always do the first time they come in because it's a bit weird. It's pretty gentle and usually quite painless with people. But when you've had an injury or a problem happen in your body, or your body perceives a threat, it will reflexively lock down certain patterns of movement. And pain is another thing that it causes as a protective response. But what I'm working in is the reflexive inhibition of movement. So you might have tweaked something around the shoulder, for example, to come back to that one, and your body sort of then adjusts your posture without you thinking about it. And so with Counterstrain, what we do is use movement and glides and positioning techniques, which again is usually taking the body into its comfortable position and hold that, and then the body is happy to let go of that protective response that it's been holding on to, so frees up the movement that's been lacking.
And that does happen, doesn't it, when you get injured or you overstrain something, your body sort of locks in and gets tight, and then you don't want to move because it hurts. So
I mean, there is sometimes things just won't move, but sometimes there's also a fear component with movement, which makes sense as well sometimes, until you know what your problem is and you've been properly assessed and given good advice. But yeah, it's that subconscious thing as well, and probably the one that everyone can identify is if you see people who've really hurt their back or something and they're really hunched over. And if I run with that example to explain Counterstrain, it's your body saying, I want to stay in a flexed position. And usually there's a physical trigger in the body that we can unlock by doing more flexion, which will let you straighten out better. So yeah, the body has its ways of protecting, and we have to acknowledge that, but usually the problem is that protection lasts too long, or it's too extreme for the problem. It's a really nice short-term response that our bodies have got, but in the long term it's really bad for us. And your body can hold on to these things for years.
Absolutely. So tell me, what's the biggest area you're curious about in regards to like physio and movement and the body?
That's a really great question. I have just finished a course a couple of weeks ago, and that was about the nervous system and manually treating nerves, which again, like I said, you think you're on top of something, and then you go, I guess if people have presented with nerve problems before, you look at treating things like spinal mobility, posture, muscle imbalances to allow a nerve to heal and move better. And this one is now physically treating nerves. So what we're sort of finding there is that the nerve could be causing all that stuff to go around it.
Wow.
So in terms of treating, tight muscles around a nerve, it's like, if we can treat the nerve, the muscles will just let you move better and stuff. So that's kind of blowing my mind.
Yeah, how fascinating.
Yeah, and the other amazing thing that I really took from that course was something that we have always kind of considered, but I think downplayed, is scars. And it's been showing how, and like I could see it with people on the course, phenomenal responses by doing manual treatment on scars. And they could be scars that have been there for years and you think they don't cause me any pain or problem. But looking at movement patterns and postures and then coming in and treating scars freed up so much mobility for people. It sort of, again, was a bit of a game changer for me. So now I've started to ask my clients, all my clients, I'm like, have you got any scars?
Yeah, right.
And I'm heading to those scars and treating them. And it's a gentle treatment too. So it's a bit back to that counterstrain model of treatment.
Yeah.
Where it's quite a nice thing, as opposed to the old school beating the hell out of a scar. Yeah. Yeah. So they're probably the two things that have really got my interest going at the moment.
Yeah, that's interesting. I love that looking at, instead of just the muscles and the skeletal system, but looking at that nervous system, which is so interesting. Treating the injury. There's
some people out there doing some amazing research and coming up with new things, and the results just look fantastic. So exciting things to keep coming.
I met a lady years ago who had a bit, going back to the shoulder, had this bursitis and a lot of pain. And she just wouldn't move her shoulder. I don't think couldn't is the word. She just wouldn't move her shoulder.
Yeah.
And I started, giving her some exercises.
Yeah.
And English was her second language. So it was a little bit of a barrier. But we worked out there was this psychological pain. There wasn't actually any real pain. The shoulder had actually healed. The movement pattern that she had was actually normal.
Wow.
But it was in her mind that she thought that she still had this injury 3 years later. So she just stopped moving her arm. And that was a real eye-opener for me as well, that your brain, your subconscious mind can hold on to pain as well and give physical pain.
Yeah.
But the movement was actually quite normal.
That's right. And the pain is a conception, really. It's your body's interpretation of risk in a way. And sometimes we do have a lot of conscious control of that. And I think exercise is a good way forward a lot of the time, because you are, as long as they've been assessed and it's safe and the rest of it, and they've put those disclaimers into everything. But then exercise is telling the body, yes, you can move, and it helps the nervous system then sort of go like, oh, okay, I don't need to be in this protective state all the time, which pain's a protection thing. So in a way, it's a beautiful thing, right? If it's working well, it keeps us safe. But when it's been wound up by experience and time and all these things, it can take over a bit. So I think that's a perfect example. Actually.
Look, obviously I love the body. It's my job, but it's so interesting when you come across things like that it does. You have that light bulb moment.
Awesome.
So from a personal point of view and a movement point of view, what does your day look like? Do you exercise? Do you train? Do you have stretches that you do?
Yeah, I love to exercise. It's my I'm not a meditator or anything like that, but I look at exercise as my me time as well. So I'm a pretty early riser usually. I'll either go to the gym or walk my dog in the morning. And then if I can, maybe a couple of times a week, I'll go back and do some weights training, and play a little bit of sport as well in the evenings, a couple of nights a week, which is now more social than anything. But I still can't help but get a little bit too competitive at times.
So what sports do you play?
I've always been a footballer, but I've decided I'm too old for that now. And now I play basketball and beach volleyball.
Nice. And so what are some of so you said that you work out every day. So cardiovascular sort of?
I like to run, so I try and do probably one run a week. Distance-y running. I do 2 to 3 sessions of high intensity interval training. And 2 to 3 sessions of resistance training. So I try and get a bit of variety and space that out throughout the week as well.
Well, you definitely get a tick from the World Health Organization with
good.
those sorts of things.
Yeah, no, I enjoy it, and if I know if I don't get my exercise in, I'm certainly a more depressed or grumpy person. So yeah, it's important for me.
And do you have, from a physio point of view, obviously a very good warm up, cool down, stretchy routine? Or is it something that you lack in?
No, I'm not always good with cool downs. I should be better at that because I rush off. I've just got a busy life, and I do a little bit of stretching, but I certainly make sure I don't skimp on a warm up.
Yeah.
That to me is the important one if you're going to pick and choose. Some sort of either cardio machine or a run, and if you're starting some weights, the first couple of sets or the first set of a new exercise to me is usually a lighter one. I might do 20 repetitions and just make sure I've warmed up that neuromuscular pathway, and I think that's really important to help prevent injury. Or my football team back in the day used to be a bit angry at me when I would run the warm-ups and they're saying, mate, you're tiring us out before the game, but to me it helps prevent injuries. It's important.
Warming up is, I would agree too, warming up is probably fundamentally the most important. Stretching's obviously very important.
Stretching feels nice, yeah, absolutely.
But definitely warming up those muscles, that definitely prevents injury. Yeah.
And social sport is really bad for it. As adults, you rock up and it's like one game finishes, in the next 2 minutes they start a new game, so you've really got to take it on yourself, I think, to go do your warm-up before that. Yeah.
So tell me, what's one of the most important lessons you've learned over your career being a physio?
Oh wow, cool question. I think if I'm thinking about it from a personal perspective of career fulfillment, getting passionate and engaged in what you do was a game changer for me. And I think realistically the first few years of my job I just sort of was like, as I mentioned before, like, yep, I'm a physio, I know how to be a physio. I enjoyed chatting to people and having fun and whatnot while I was working, and I still like that. But I take so much more from my career these days now that I love it, if that makes sense. And it's I enjoy what I do in that way. Is that where you were headed with that question?
Yeah. Look, I think what I got out of that is that you're passionate about the people. And I'm definitely the same too. I'd never realised, although being a personal trainer has personal in it, but I didn't realise how you get invested in someone. And that becomes passion and love, and you want to do the right thing by everyone.
And we get joy from like seeing people change and improve.
Oh, absolutely.
They're here. There's nothing really worse than when you're not succeeding in what you're trying to do for somebody, and you're not getting them to achieve their goals. And then when you can see them achieve their goals, it's we get a bit of a kick out of that.
Absolutely. It's a great thing when you see them taking on board and changing and morphing and developing, and amazing humans.
And I think the other probably thing that I've learned a lot in my career is just to keep meeting people where they're at and being really respectful and valuing them as well. I think if you sort of show that you're on their team and there to help, people respond a lot better. They, you don't get people not arrive to their appointments if you, give them a message on Saturday and go, how'd you go? Did you get through your game? Like they know you care, and it's genuine as well. It has to be genuine.
Of course. That's awesome. Now, I did want to talk about Power to Move. We obviously, and you know this, we've got from kids all the way up to older, wonderful people. But I thought what would be really good is, are there fundamental, like key things as we age that we should be trying to do or being able to achieve from a movement point of view? So, as if I was to say to you, I've got some kids under the age of 10, what are some of the things that they should be able to do from a movement point of view?
Yeah, cool. So in terms of kids, there is sort of like specific kind of lists, and I'd probably be going out of my area to really dabble in specifics and that, but know that it does exist. There are, I guess, kind of markers, and they're very varied because every kid will develop in their own way, but it is good for parents, if they're concerned in that way, to talk to pediatricians and that type of stuff. There are pediatric physios as well, and that's more about developmental milestones. But I guess in a general kind of sense with kids under 10, I think it's probably really important just to try and get them involved in movement, and just understanding that their body is a great tool that helps them achieve things in life and gives them fun, and just get them out and whether it's jumping on the trampoline or running around playing chasey, all those things are great for their cardiovascular, but it also puts those habits in their life forever. So I think kids that are doing those things from early ages are going to continue to be healthy adults as well.
So then if we move from under 10, if we move to teens, and again that's a big area, and I know that we have a mutual client who is a teenager. What are some of the fundamental things as a teen, and I have kids that are on computer screens and hunched over. What are some of those things that we need?
I think you've nailed it there. It blows my mind when you're talking to some teens or their parents are there and they say, oh yeah, I play a bit of gaming or something, and you're like, okay, so how much? And their parents are like, tell them. It's like 5 hours a night or something, and you're like, whoa. So heaps of this kind of stuff, and phones as well. So people, like, I know a lot of practitioners are noticing people with neck problems and even hand problems from being on the phone so much.
So apart from saying no to...
I think it's probably more about limits, because it's a part of life these days, isn't it? But yes, it's about, I think, a bit like the kids in some ways, in terms of get up and move, do something. But teenagers should be playing sport too if they're able. It's a really good outlet for them. Obviously, everyone's a bit different. Some people aren't drawn to sport, so it's finding them something that's going to keep moving. I think some movement every day, because teenagers can be inclined just hormonally to just want to chill out. It's what their bodies kind of, they need more rest because they're growing and they're going through a lot of changes. So it won't always be something they'll want to do, so trying to find something that they actually enjoy, that's fun to move. They can start a bit of light resistance work in those ages as well. A lot of the time there's been a lot of fear about that historically. Most of that, according to my reading these days and literature reviews, has been kind of debunked, as long as they're not doing crazy heavy stuff.
Again, it's all that fundamental movement, isn't it? If they've got the fundamental movement right, it's okay to put some weight on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and but the body's growing a lot at that time too. So often, particularly I suppose, teenage boys will want bigger muscles, but they're growing. Their bones are growing, so they're not going to have that. And you even see it with AFL players, for example. The first few years of their career, they're smaller, and just knowing that's okay. And probably on a broader level, I think the other big thing with teenagers is timing. So the body clock naturally moves a bit later for people in their teenage years. So having that sleep in and going to bed late, even though that annoys a lot of parents, is actually reasonably a healthy thing for teenagers. So trying to let that happen, and so they can get sleep when they need it, is a good thing. And I know it's hard with the way society works these days. So probably getting up at 6 a.m, going for a run, actually might not be the best call for a teenager. As a general rule, but everybody's different, of course.
So then as we get on, we've passed our teenage years, we're early adult, heading into our 30s. What are some of the things that we should be focusing on?
A lot of people in those age groups are playing pretty competitive sport. So I think there's the maintenance of your body away from sport that's really important. So doing Pilates or yoga or stretching or a weights program that's going to help condition the body to be able to take a few more knocks as we're not as bouncy as we were before. And into that age group, probably starting a lot more full-time work. So time demands become harder as well. So making sure we actually make time for ourselves. And I think even as we move into that sort of late 20s, 30s, people having kids and starting to progress in careers, previously really fit and health conscious people let that slide. They're worried about their kids, and that's logical, and it makes a lot of sense in that time in life. But making time for yourself is important. You can't look after other people if you haven't taken care of yourself as well.
Oh, speaking my language. Absolutely, yeah. And it's something that we see as well. We'll get students that'll be here in their early 20s, and then as life gets busy, the gym and the movement becomes this ancillary thing. It doesn't become this important thing. And then when they come back, they realise what they've missed if they just, found something that was, consistent for them in some way.
Absolutely. And if you let it lapse for too long, then when you come back to things, you're a bit more prone to injury as well, because your tissues aren't conditioned to it. So that actually reminds me of another concept to think about in there is I think in that age group you see a lot of boom bust. People that go, I'm going to do this 1,000 push-up challenge and they hurt because they're not used to it. And you can injure yourselves, and then they go, well, that's not for me, and they stop. So maybe a bit of moderation if lifestyle's not allowing it, but try and keep something up.
A little bit of movement every day.
Perfect.
And then, we get older. And I think one of the things that I see, and I'm sure you see as well, is that you get people who haven't done that. They've done the boom. And they've completely busted, and they've spent 30 years doing nothing. And then they realise, whether it be physically or they've gone to the doctor and the doctor has said, well, you're in this state now. It's tough. Mentally as well as physically, but what are some of those things, if we have been that boom or bust person, what are some of the fundamental things as we age that are your sort of like those key things that we really need to be able to do these for long-term health and movement? I
mean, if people are in a position to, and if they're watching us talk at the moment, they're in a good position to, because they've got some help, right? And it actually is important. You don't just go into things blindly, I don't think, if you can avoid it. And obviously not everyone can, but if you've got someone that can help make a program for you and keep you accountable, but also progress that load as you go, that sets you up to succeed, really. And making it a bit of fun is a good thing too. People often think I love to run, but some people it's a nightmare running. So what's going to be fun for them? Do they like to dance, or those kinds of things, like ride a bike, whatever it is. And with friends or community is often a really important thing, especially for some subgroups of the population. They're just not going to do it if they're on their own. And so if they've got a training buddy, and another school mum that wants to go for a walk on Wednesday mornings, then fantastic. You keep yourselves honest. And so there are probably a few concepts there that I think are important. But it often comes down to knowing where you're at the time and what you want to do or where you want to be, and just knowing that you need to take steps to be there as well, not trying to just be there straight away. And I see a lot of people injured that go, so you say, what do you do? I run like 4 times a week, and you're like, oh, okay, when was your last run? It was 3 years ago. Well, unfortunately, you've lost what you had at that point, and it doesn't really matter anymore. So and we're all guilty of it at times, but thinking that we are what we're not. But probably on the flip side of that, people's bodies are, they can push a bit as well. So once they've started doing a little bit of stuff, it's okay to rev them up a little bit too.
It's amazing what that and I still when I get a new client who may have not moved for a while or a long time, I still find it so fascinating how quickly the body adapts and evolves. And you get someone in, we've got a client at the moment who started about 15, 16 weeks ago, who was very immovable, like very locked up. and we started with resistant bands and 1 kilo weights, and now this person's doing a full-fledged
awesome.
weights program. It's crazy, and again, it's that slow process, but if your body is ready, it can move really quickly too, which is just...
And they'd be feeling so proud, I'm sure, as well, like looking back at what they've come from.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, great concept.
Matt, I have absolutely loved talking to you. Just one question before we leave. Why physiotherapy?
Fantastic question. Why physiotherapy for me as a job?
Yeah.
I think I was always drawn to health and maybe more so sport rather than exercise as a young person. I was always had a ball in my hand or doing something along those lines. And so I think I looked at health and sport kind of careers. Ironically, as I've got into it more and more, like certainly health, fitness, mobility, that sort of stuff is important to me. The sports stuff, I don't feel inclined to go and be a sports physiotherapist. I like helping people just in their lives these days. But I think that was what drew me to the profession in the first place.
Yeah.
And I think that was about finding something that I aligned with, and then being able to have a positive influence on other people's lives as well. And as I've learnt more and done more in the profession, it also becomes a bit of a puzzle for me as well. So I really love that moment where you get to go, let's try this with you, and then that's changed this, and sort of like I mentioned before, you get a bit of a kick out of that when we can change people's lives, and whether it be a big thing or a little thing, it's improving other people's times as well. So I really enjoy that. That's
amazing. And tell us, where do we find you? So I'm sure, I know lots of our clients go to you, but if someone's listening to this and goes, I really want to see Matt, I really understand where he's at and I want him to help me, where can we find you?
Yeah, my business is called Body Matters Physio, and I'm on Chief Street in Brompton.
Excellent. We will have some details about that too. Thank you so much for talking to us today.
It's been a pleasure, yeah.
I've really enjoyed learning more about you and movement, and we look forward to having you coming back, and maybe we might talk about shoulders next time and really break that down, because that's a big area, I think, for people. Shoulders.
Beautiful. Oh, yeah.
Holds a lot of tension.
Very mobile, and as such problematic area, and obviously it ties in with our neck and upper spine. So yes, we're starting a whole new thing.
Absolutely. We'll talk about that next time.
But yeah, there's a lot to talk about with shoulders.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Matt. I've really enjoyed our chat today.
Pleasure. Thanks very much.